Broadcasting live worldwide. Welcome.
Are you ready? Welcome. Señoras y señores, welcome
a Diálogo con Luis Otero. So welcome to a new episode of Dialogo with Luis Otero. This is your host, Luis Otero. Thank you so much to all of the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that they listen to us in every episode worldwide. So I want to thank you to all of you for your support, for just taking the time to listen to our content and just to listen to all our great guests. That today is going to be an amazing podcast that we're going to have. And we're going to introduce, in a few seconds, our guest that I'm very excited for him to be in our show. But before, I just want to let you know, guys, to please listen to us and review the podcast in every single platform. We're in more than 27 platforms worldwide, the iHeartRadio.com or iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app, all the Amazon and Alexa's Echoes, devices all around the world, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher.com, Radio.com, Castbox, Podchaser, Pocket Cast, Spotify, you name it. We're everywhere. So you can listen to us everywhere. And please follow us in Instagram. We're 99,000 followers plus in my Instagram. That is at the Luis Otero, or go to Dialogo con Otero, the podcast page in Instagram, or go to dialogoconotero.com so you can listen to all the episodes in just one place. Today I have an amazing guest. We're getting close. We're a few weeks away of, Autism Awareness Month. And this episode is very important to me. And it will be very important to you guys because I really, I identify myself, with all the, kids and the condition of autism. I was born with ADHD myself, and I struggle a lot just to focus, but this is not even close to that. And I can't imagine. And that's why, I have today my guest that is a great father, children's book author, human rights activist, and owner of Dad's Publishing, who have published tremendous books. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of these titles before the new book that recently was released that is titled His Own Way. He have released The Greatest Christmas Ever, Little Itty Bitty First Day, Little Itty Bitty Fly Me to the Moon. To me, it's a tremendous pleasure and honor to have today in Dialogo with Luis Otero the amazing children's book author, human rights activist, and I think a true example of what the love could do, love of a father could, do, and how can that inspire anyone out there. The amazing Sergio Liden. Thank you so much for, accepting the invitation, Sergio, to be part of this amazing episode that we're going to have today and talk about your new book, His Own Way, under Dad's Publishing.
Thank you, Mr. Otero, for the. I wish every time I walked into a room, I had you announcing me. That's absolutely beautiful, and I'm absolutely humbled. Lots of love to all your listeners all the way around the world, and I'm very excited to be here. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. And let's talk about His Own Way, because this is not your first book. This is your fourth book, and you as a father of a kid with autism, you really mentioned to, and I really was reading a lot about yourself, and you said, I wish that I had a book like this when my son was diagnosed, and we didn't know what to expect. But with this book, and all that mission that you have, just, writing this book and the books, under Dad's Publishing, that is your company, you have taken a mission to educate the world about, autism, and how we can take a very loving approach to embrace, every single kid or every single individual suffering from autism, in order to integrate them to the society and, build them and be able to provide those tools for them to be successful and productive citizens of the world in life. How does how your son inspired you? Because, and how was the story and how it started? Because I know that before Dad's Publishing, everything, was, how I do this, you give all the credit to your beautiful wife. And I think that that's extremely important, because this is a family effort. In my house, it's my wife and my two kids, and it's just, we have each other all the time. And it's a really good example of yourself, creating that amazing bond that you have with your wife, and be able to embrace, your son, and say, let's find the best way to give them the best tools, the best love, in order for him to be a citizen of the world with productive and with love, with productivity, with love, and many other things. But how did this story started? Because I'm extremely intrigued and excited. And how do you get this inspired to just start this beautiful mission that you have started with That's Publishing?
One of the things is, thank you for the question. My inspiration was my daughter. The story is told from the 5-year-old sister who has a 3-year-old brother with autism, and she doesn't understand it. She doesn't understand what autism means, but only sees the behavior for what it is. And the problem that the parents have with regards to kind of ignoring her and paying attention to him. And this story was actually written back in 2008 when my son was 4. He was diagnosed at 3. And between 3 and 4, as soon as we got that diagnosis, my wife started crying. I went into mode. What must I do to fix it? How can I fix it? Everything. How can I fix? What do I need to do? Because I messed up as a father. I messed up as a father because I have a child with autism. It's my fault, so I'm going to fix it. Wow. Doing this stuff, we ignored our daughter. We ignored our daughter completely. Mental health is an incredibly big subject in my life, and it's something that I tackle with every single one of my books. And this one is the aspect of neglect and ignoring a child. And that was out of fear of our son. There's plenty of statistics for autism. White children in the United States are 1.1 times more likely to get autism than African-American children. They're 1.2 times more likely to get autism than Hispanic children. African-American children are 1.1 times more likely to get autism than Hispanic children.
Wow.
We can go through all the statistics and all the numbers. The 3% is the, in the northeastern part of the United States is autism. Highest rate of autism in the United States. Boys, 3.63% get autism, are diagnosed with autism, while girls are 1.25%. Of them get autism, are diagnosed with autism, excuse me. We have enough about autism. We understand autism as parents, but what do we do for the sibling? What do we do for everybody who deals with that child with autism? Because my son was diagnosed with, on the spectrum, with severe autism. What we did with him, we were really afraid. He'd run out in front of cars. He would, it was scary, but we ignored our daughter. And this thing is understanding on one aspect that he comes to understand that they do it their own way. And that's kind of what, the sister understands about the brother, that, he might be funny. It might look kind of funny with his actions. The book starts out with my brother is autistic. It really is quite funny. It means he opens and closes doors all day and hops around like a bunny. That's what she saw. I remember standing at the door, hoping that he would not, keeping my hand there because I knew he was going to slam his hands against the door. I was scared to death, but she looked at it from a different perspective. And looking at it from a different perspective that she did doesn't mean that she was wrong. She's 5. And that's that's the narrator of the book. It's a 5-year-old girl. But how does that affect the daughter when the parents are concerned about her? So after a year, I realized after my son was diagnosed at the age of 3, that my daughter was really getting depressed. She did illustrations that were very sad. She always liked to draw. She did illustrations that made me really sad. And I was wondering, what is wrong? And then my wife and I started looking to see what our behavior was. What actions were that we were taking that were hurting her, but we were not thinking about her because we were so concerned about him. And that's when we made the change that said, you know what, he's autistic. There's no cure. There's still no cure. And we're going to take care of her. We'll take care of him. We'll take care of him without question, but we're going to start spending some time and some energy and, giving love to her. So we started, separating, where I would take my daughter out to the movies while my wife was here with our son. My wife would take my daughter out, to lunch or to dinner. We did things we started kind of separating with regards to the responsibilities we had as parents. Before we always did everything together. So that was definitely my inspiration, my daughter, and with autism and how it affects the siblings and everybody else. And on the larger scale, understanding that my son is autistic is something anybody can see when we see it. But the aspect of acceptance towards other individuals and other human beings, maybe we don't see the physical aspect of autism. Maybe it's somebody from a different race. I was born in Spain. Spanish is my first language. Living in the United States, my father is Swedish, so I have, the blanc, I look white.
Yeah.
But I remember in the second grade where, somebody spray painted when I was 7 years old, somebody spray painted Sergio as a wetback with 3 exclamation marks in blue. And I thought to myself, I had only 2 questions. One, what is a wetback? I was 7 years old. I had no idea. And then why do they have to be so loud about it? Because I learned what exclamation marks are. It doesn't matter. We're lucky. We just need to come to accept individuals for who they are. In LA, I'm Mexican. People haven't seen me. They think Sergio, Mexicano.
Yeah.
When I lived in Miami, Cubano. And when I lived in New York, era Puerto Riqueño.
Yeah.
So but if we just come to accept people for who they are, then defenses don't need to come up. We don't have to start worrying and dealing with mental health to such an extreme. And, then we can, reciprocate the aspect of stress and strain that we may be having towards another individual. I can communicate, these are the experiences that I have as a Latino. And, and then you may very well have had some of those experiences yourself. Other people have had those experiences. So we can communicate and say, wow, you know what, even though this happened to me, I can communicate it to other individuals. And, another community can look at me and go, well, you know what, he's a nice guy. He's a sweet guy. He's about doing good. So, I want you to not like me because I'm not a nice guy. Don't not like me because of what I look like, because of my ethnicity, because of what my first name is, or because I'm incredibly tall. I'm 6'5.5". So, it's an aspect. So on the basis, it's very much about autism, about the understanding of a child with autism, with understanding of a child that has a sibling who has autism. On the other, on the greater aspect, it's can we all just, kind of love and accept each other for who we are?
Yeah.
That's one of the important factors that I found with the writing of this book. And that's why I wrote the book. And something that you mentioned earlier was the fact that when our son was diagnosed with autism, I wish we had been given this book. When my wife got pregnant, she was told what to expect when you're expecting. I think that book has been written in multiple languages.
We read it as well.
Yeah, everybody has it. I think we have 3-4 copies of it.
Correct.
Everybody gave it to us. We bought it. Everybody gave it to us. So we have that book so that women can understand what to expect when they're expecting the changes to their bodies, the hormones, food, everything else. When my son was diagnosed with autism, I wish we were given this book and told, by the way, your son has autism. It's not going to end. You'll constantly have to take him to therapies, but don't forget your other children, because the effects of autism do not just affect the child with autism, but in fact, the entire family totally and completely, unless we come to understand, that we have to give to everybody. We have to, love everybody. Be concerned about the child with autism, but they'll be okay because they are who they are. My son still lives in his own world. He still does things his own way, and we've come to accept that and understand that. So, we're all good. And my daughter today is incredibly good. She's, doing magnificently today for no other reason than because as soon as we saw the problem, as soon as we started realizing, oh my gosh, it's kind of gone far with regards to those illustrations, we made a change. And if we got this book at the beginning, she wouldn't have had to go through that 1 year of absolute strain and stress and sadness, believing that she was less than in the family, believing that she was less important than her brother. And, that's why I wrote the book. And that's why I wish we got it when my son was diagnosed.
And it's wonderful, your answer, because it's very important for everyone listening, all the thousands that listen to us, to accept everyone as who they are. And I think that, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. You were born in Spain. You live in LA. You have lived in multiple places. I live in the northeast part of the United States, in the state of Pennsylvania. It's difficult to sometimes grasp because I never, an example, in Puerto Rico, we don't see people of color. They're all people like normal because we were raised in a country. Yeah. Like we were raised in a country where everyone is just like, hey, we're all Puerto Ricans and we all love each other and we respect each other. And in every place in the world, you will find people that they are maybe not sensitive or not educated, I will say, in many, of this type of topics. And because we tend to just be uncomfortable. People get sometimes uncomfortable and they don't know how to react. And it's very important to be just cognizant and be aware that we got to accept people as who they are and just to make them feel welcome and find a way to just understand them better in order to provide them those tools and feel love. I think that if we start with the premises of like, if we do things with love, things will be very different, in the era that we're currently living, that unfortunately we're divided for many specific reasons. Could be politically, could be everything that we're living. And I think that even social media, as an example, and I will put this, in the conversation, Sergio, even though have helped unite families, educate people, because I educate myself of the topic before having this great conversation that we're having today in the episode, have unfortunately as well divided us, or maybe not. It's just very difficult today for people to just maybe just put things, in a way that they can say, hey, let's be compassionate here, or let's be maybe more aware of what's happening. And an example with autism, I feel that people sometimes they just don't even understand maybe like those little flags, or okay, how I should react, or how I should talk, or how I should approach, because it's different, but in a beautiful way. Because an example, I know people and I know persons that they have lived with autism and they're brilliant minds. One of the people that they're brilliant, beautiful people. And I think that, with this mission that you have brought in with that publishing and with, this amazing book, your fourth installment, because you have get inspired. And it's just beautiful too, Sergio, you as a dad, embracing your son and being able just to be very aware, because sometimes we tend to be one-sided. And now when you look at your daughter maybe for that year was expressing maybe how she was feeling because she wasn't aware of what's going on, or how she can express those things. And you as parents were able to bring her in to just embrace her brother and be able to, as a family, get united and say, hey, he is how he is. We'll love him. We'll give him all the respect, all the tools, we will instill all the values in him. And he is his own person. He might be living in his own world, but he's part of this world, and he have to be accepted, embraced, and loved. And with this amazing book, His Own Way, it's just beautiful because you have amazing illustrations from Francesco Ranzini, who collaborated you and worked with you in this 39-page book. And it have to be very, for you, emotional. I think every single book have to be emotional because he inspires you. Your son, your family inspires you. It's no better way for a man to just get inspired by his family. And it have to be a work that you have to enjoy, but at the same time have to be very beautiful for you to just create these tools for people to just learn, be aware of people like your son to be able to have a better life, better world. And I think that that's a beautiful gesture, and it's something that I really respect you a lot, because illustrating the book with the message that you are delivering, writing those words, all those endless nights, just proofreading it, making sure that the message is correct, have to be very, very humbling and very fulfilling, Sergio, how is that process? How do you emotionally get together, and as well with, Francesco Ranzini, tremendous illustrator, to put this great and beautiful piece, your fourth book. So this is not your first rodeo. It's been 3 rodeos that have been amazing books. And by the way, you can go to datspublishing.com, www.datspublishing.com, and you can find the books of Sergio in his own way as well. How do you put everything together, and how do you get inspired for every single book? Because every single book have a different message, different wording, different everything, to put such a great piece.
Wow. Amazing question. Thank you for bringing up Francesco Razzini, Italian illustrator. He's actually a painter. I went through 157 portfolios looking for the illustrator, and that was for an image for Greatest Christmas Ever. I write the books and then I storyboard them, which is kind of a complicated, angles with regards to the types of illustrations, over the shoulders, 2 shots. I came from film. I worked in production. So the images convey the emotion of what I want you to feel. The books are written so that even if you don't know how to read, you can look at the illustrations and understand the book from beginning to end without an issue. So that was one of the objectives that I had in the writing. So when I found Francesco, who was able to convey a message, able to convey a storyboard that I did, I knew he was the guy. He's from right outside of Rome, Italy, currently lives in Mexico City. The book, I write and I rewrite and I write and then I rewrite again in my head. It goes at the point that my head is going to explode.
That's impressive.
At the point
in your brain,
it gets worse.
Wow.
It gets worse. Mr. Otero, it gets worse. At the point that my brain is it feels like I'm going to explode.
Wow.
I sit down and it takes me about 10 minutes to write each book. And that's only because I don't know how to type very well. I don't like using the letter Q because I can't find it on the keyboard. So you won't find many Qs in any of my books, but it takes me about 10 minutes just because I don't know how to write. So I write and I write in my head constantly.
Wow.
To such an extreme that when I finally set it down, it just pours out. And it's an incredibly painful process. These books are very painful. When I write it out, I see the illustrations in my head, which is why then after I write it, I go ahead and I storyboard it. And then I send it over to Francesco and explain to him what my illustrations are, because I'm not good at drawing. I don't even like to say that I draw. I say storyboard because he's an illustrator. He's a painter. He's absolutely fabulous. The books are incredibly painful because they're about, they're semi-autobiographical. They're a little bit about myself in them. The aspect of, I told you that story of when I was 7 years old in the 2nd grade and not being, not feeling accepted when those words were written in front of my school in spray paint, and nobody ever took those, those words down. Nobody ever got rid of the spray paint. It was just time. After months and months, the spray paint finally faded away. And the insult to, the only Latino that was in the school, besides my siblings that have American names. So I was the only one whose name sounded Latino. I was in pain for an incredibly long period of time and not accepted for who I was, but because they thought. So the idea that His Own Way is about an individual who is a little different, who is just being judged for, it kind of sounds a little bit like me, just a little bit. I'm not autistic, but the aspect of the acceptance, very much autobiographical. When I finish the book, if I don't, I'm not going to be politically correct.
Yeah.
I hate my books because it was for this one to acknowledge the fact that I failed as a father. I hate the fact that I did that, for His Own Way. I did not see my daughter's needs immediately. I ignored my daughter and I made her sad. It makes me a failure as a dad. I hold myself to an incredibly high bar with regards to, how I am with my child. I don't spank I've never touched my children in anger. They've never been spanked. I just talk to them. I've never sent them to their room. I just talk to them. And if you listen to my children are going to end up in therapy telling their therapist, yeah, my dad just talked a lot. He just talked us, until we realized I'm not going to do that anymore because I need him to stop talking. So I lecture, I use my words when I explain to them and when I talk to them. So when I fail as a father and they're hurt, I take responsibility. The aspect you were mentioning, the aspect of social media earlier, and the aspect of the strains. The country is, we're talking just about we can talk about any country. We're talking about there being a division, in England now, that's in the news, the United States is in the news, Australia is in the news. Got a lot of places that are in the news currently, watching the news this morning, that are a little bit divided. And one of the things that I believe is that the reason there's such division is because people are not taking responsibility for the fault and actions that they themselves take.
You have hit the nail. You have hit the nail. Yeah.
And it's much easier for me to say, I failed my daughter as a father, as her dad.
Yeah.
Dad is the one that takes care of the emotional. Mom takes care of emotional. Mothers and fathers do the job of the mother and father. But I can say that I failed as a dad to my daughter because somebody did not write this book. I can be angry, or I can say, you know what? I'm going to take responsibility for what I did. I'm going to take responsibility for, having failed my daughter and ignoring my daughter when we got this diagnosis for my son. And I wrote about it. And I wrote about my failures as a father. Because if you read the book, you'll see that the parents really are not in there. At the very end, the consolation does not happen with the parents to the child. And the story is exactly what happened. It is exactly true to form to what took place. It's just written from, the 5-year-old's point of view. But I take responsibility for the actions that I take, for what I've done. And it's, instead of making my life easier by blaming you, I take responsibility for what I did. Everybody loves good days. Everybody loves bad, everybody likes okay days. Nobody likes bad days. And my favorite are my bad days. And that's because I can learn from what I did that made it a bad day. And I don't look at those as bad days. I look at those as, days that I learned. That was a learning day. It wasn't a bad day. It was a learning day. And then I don't make the same mistakes again. And that's one of the things that, I think if that's what we did, and then came to, you can tell me I'm a horrible father for what I did by ignoring my daughter for that first year after my son was diagnosed with autism, or you can, or as you're doing, saying, you know what, it's a beautiful book. I love the message that you have. And then I feel okay about expressing myself, about talking about it. Now all of a sudden I don't feel alone in this, in this factor, because as dads, we all mess up. As moms, we all mess up. It's just an aspect of holding ourselves accountable and saying, look, this is what I did wrong. And I always tell my children, I'm sorry. That's one of the, they always hear me saying, I'm sorry. If I make a mistake, I'm sorry. Regardless of what their age was, I'm sorry. So, social media, it's easy to blame social media and easy to say, that one platform or another platform is the fault to blame. But the aspect is, we as human beings need to take responsibility for what we did wrong, what we do. And if everybody does that, well, then we understand that people that mess up is normal. Then it's, that the norm, which means most of us, actually all of us, mess up at some point.
Correct.
So messing up is normal. It's normal to not do the correct thing.
Yeah.
Screw up or, mess up, whatever term we want to use there. But as long as we take responsibility for that and understand, well, I'm not going to judge you for messing up if I mess up myself as a father, as a dad. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. Guess what? Now we're connecting as dads. Now we can say, okay, now what can we do better? Or on my own, what can I do better to assure that I don't make that mistake, that I bring more strength and love and happiness to my family? My children have excelled this year because, during COVID, we've been shut down.
Yeah.
I'm in Los Angeles. We've been shut down. My kids are doing incredibly well at school. Both of them are. They're getting straight A's. It's because of my wife. She does an incredible job. And with my kids, even with my son with autism, we understand his needs and what he has to have in order to. And one of the things with autism that we learned is that repetitive behavior, repetitive schedules are the best for him. So he wakes up every morning and does the exact same routine. He has a routine, and that routine has helped him a lot, and us allowing him that routine and saying, it doesn't matter what the rest of the world can go away. He has his routine. If you fit into his routine, great. If you don't fit into his routine, sorry. And by doing that and respecting the fact that he needs a routine, and my daughter, routine helps her as well. She's not autistic, but giving my son that routine and allowing him to have that routine. And when he's upset, looking at it and paying attention to the signs, because there are many signs that children give before they open their mouth and say, I'm not happy with what's going on. There are plenty of signs. There's isolation. There's oversleeping. There's not sleeping enough. There's problems going to sleep. There's problems waking up. Just look at it. Are they eating too much? Are they not eating enough? There is a ton of signs. And this is simply because I have a son with autism that I've really looked into this. This has been since, 2007 that I've really looked into this stuff to see what the aspects of behavior with children. So I'm grateful to my son for being autistic. Otherwise, I wouldn't have all this information. And with regards to him being grateful that he's autistic, I don't care if he's autistic. I don't care if he's ADD. I don't care what he is. I'm grateful for him being who he is. Whether on the politically correct factor, I say I have an autistic son or a son with autism. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
The fact is, what we want as parents and what we all want as parents, I believe all, I'm hoping all, is we all want our children to be okay. We all want our children to be happy and to feel loved. And because that's what we strive for every single day, we don't take it as a given. We every single day talk to our children. What do you need? What do you want? My wife during the pandemic, when everything was shut down, she was taking them on drives. We take them on, or sometimes I'd go, if I wasn't working like a maniac, go on drives with them. But every single day, I go up to them every morning and I give them a hug. And I don't wait for them to ask. I always go up to them and give them a hug. And I always give them hugs and kisses. I love my children and I express that to them. And then they know, okay, you know what? I'm completely accepted here. And if I'm accepted here, then it doesn't matter what happens outside of here, during Zoom meetings, during Zoom classroom, or during phone calls with friends, or whatever the case is. Because if I get rejected there, I'm still accepted here. So we give the solid foundation. And that's something that we work towards, giving them that foundation. We've been doing that since they were babies.
And it's impressive.
That's one of
it's impressive, Sergio, because you have provided them structure, and the structure in anything in life provides. Then after that, when you have a structure, then it's a discipline. It becomes like a discipline, something that really gives you that structure for you to succeed and thrive in life. And you mentioned so many great things in this conversation, because taking responsibility, I will tell you this, as a great father, you accept the responsibility, but you don't have to blame yourself because you didn't have no tools. So it's okay to have mistakes, and it's okay. An example in my life, I had mistakes, and it's okay to learn from the mistakes. And it's something that's lacking in this generation and what we're living through politics and many other parts. That it's okay to say, "Hey, I made a mistake, and this wasn't the correct way to do this." And it's something that it needs to be taken in every single level. And people, unfortunately, these days, even in the political level, and we're not gonna get into details in politics because they don't even construct to anything good. It doesn't matter if you're right, in left, in the middle. It's very crazy. Nobody's gonna be happy with politics. People start to just point out fingers, and hey, people have to sit down and say, it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay that you have to admit it. Like, get your ego out of the way. And you didn't do this. I'm just mentioning, a suggestion to the world that they're listening. Get your ego out of the way, or that pride, and just say, you know what? It's okay. I'm a human. I'm not perfect. I made a mistake. Let me learn from this. Let me educate myself from whatever I did wrong to avoid that. And it's wonderful, Sergio, that you decided to, and because you hold yourself to a high standard to educate yourself and try to do it right. You have done it right. You're raising a beautiful family, amazing son, amazing daughter, with, the support side by side of your wife. That is one of the most important things to a man that is married, just to have that partner, that love, that person in ups and downs to help you get through life, as well you to her, because it's in both sides, to make sure that you provide that structure, those values, those tools, those beautiful, things to your family with love, that you have done it to make sure that they have a good and positive and beautiful life. And I think that it's important. You as an immigrant, me as an immigrant, we have suffered, obviously, and you made that very clear. Like, hey, you were different. You were the only one that maybe had a name that it was Hispanic, because your life is just by itself another book too, and this has been a healing process for you, because your life is just a book as well. You were born in Madrid, and this is for all the audience. We have so many listeners from Barcelona, from Mallorca, from like Madrid, from Ibiza, from Canary Islands, people from Spain. This is impressive. Like, Sergio's life, including what he have lived as a father, but as a kid and a children in formation, it was a book itself. So you were born in Spain, in Madrid, Spain, and you guys had to flee under dictator General Franco. And then you went to Buenos Aires, and you had to flee again because another dictator got down there in Argentina. And then you guys came to the United States, to Southern California. And, when you were 5 years old, that 5 years of your first 5 years of life, that is a very huge foundation that you have been very, what I could say, with your family, you've been very cautious, making sure that they were fine, understand, provide them tools, give them that foundation of love so they live happy. Because happy kids with love, if you provide love to kids and you provide that great, environment of love and understanding, they will be always forever happy kids and happy human beings. So it's extremely important. You living through that had to be one of the most difficult times of your life, even though, and it reflects potentially maybe on your life as an adult, because your first 5 years, you were fleeing countries of communism, dictators, people that they were oppressors, that they really didn't see humans as valuable. They think that they were superior than them, because that's one of the horrible things about communism, socialism, and all this BS that really affects so much psychologically, mentally, the population. You got your family, your first 5 years, you had to move. That had to be a very impactful, I just say, stage of your life that you said, I don't want my kids to live, with what I had to go through, not in the political spectrum, but just be able to be free in a democratic country like the United States, and be able to have the tools to live with love and do not go through what I went through, because you went through that through the governments in those countries. But some people live in an oppressed world, even they live in the most free country, due to they don't know how to handle their mental health or maybe the circumstances in life. So those are as well ways that you live under a dictatorship of the circumstances from the outside dictating what you do with your life. And you decided to take your life, in your own hands, with your faith and your family, to make sure that your kids had a great life. And it's just impressive, because that manifests, that is a manifestation in these beautiful books that you created. And in his own way is another example of your prior 3 books, of just putting yourself out there, becoming yourself vulnerable, and in some kind of way healing that process of your life. This is a healing process as well too, to write these books for your own good from those stages of life that they were very rough at the beginning.
Wow. I think we're doing this to each other. It's like a tennis match.
Oh yeah.
I swing really well, and then you swing it really well. It's like, wow. When I came to the United States at the age of 5, if I can try to simplify and shorten the long version, the effects of moving to this country from my mother, who's from Argentina, was incredibly difficult for her. She had no friends. She didn't understand the language. She only spoke Spanish. My father was a U.S. citizen when I was born, so I was actually born a U.S. citizen. Then he lost his citizenship because he stayed out of the country too long.
Wow.
And when we came to this country, me and my 3 siblings were all born to a U.S. citizen before he lost his citizenship. And because we were 4 little U.S. citizens, the country let us in. So that was us getting in.
Wow.
My father was reinstated. His U.S. citizenship, though he was born in Sweden, his U.S. citizenship was reinstated. And then about 30 years later, my mother got, or 20 years later, my mother became a U.S. citizen. But when we came to this country, my mother didn't understand the language, and it was incredibly difficult for her. And she was stressed out of her mind, and she was very sad, and she didn't have any family. So she started drinking. And, with her drinking, she became violent. She was an evil drunk. And I felt it for many years, and I became very sad and very depressed. Even the ideas of, if we can hit the topic of suicide, which I wasn't suicidal at the beginning at 6, year after we came here, from the amount of pain that I had endured for that first year of being in the United States. At 6, I wanted to disappear. At 7, I learned what the word suicide was. And at 8 was my first attempt at suicide. I started drinking alcoholically at the age of 6 myself. My first drink was a blackout, and that I was 6 years old. This is a year after getting here. If we look at from that, I've been sober now. I got sober at 17, so I've been sober now over 30 years.
I'm proud of you. I gotta say, I'm proud of you because just like acknowledging, being 30 years sober and just having that, drive at the age of 17 with your counselor, if I'm not mistaken, mentor Ellen Bradley.
Ellen Bradley.
That angel that life put you through this, crazy circumstances that you were living. That was when you went to your first Alcoholic Anonymous, AA, meeting. And just being sober 30, you got to celebrate your life every day because, at the end of the day, if it wasn't for that moment that you had that angel, on your way and was able to take you to that meeting, and you'll be able to, heal little by little that chapter and then become a father and now understand the responsibility and become a successful writer and an activist and, having such a beautiful family. It's just an accomplishment by itself what you've been through, because starting to drink, a blackout at 6 had to be, you go back and and I was shocked when I hear this just a second ago. I was like, wow, what you've been through is just a movie by itself, just a story itself. And it's just, wow. Like, so what happened? Like, when you were that young, just drinking, how do you hide it from do your parents say they knew or how was everything like, Sergio?
Okay. The first drunk was December 31st. It was New Year's, 1980. So it was a month and a half before I turned 7. So I was still 6 years old, and my parents had a big party. I had a lot of people over at the house, about 150 people for New Year's Eve, and everybody was drinking champagne. And I didn't know what this was. They lifted up a glass, they toasted, and then they drank some and they kissed and they hugged and everybody was happy. And I thought, wow, that's where happiness is. I understood what it was like to get beaten. I understood later, after that, I understood what it was like to have multiple bones broken, from, the violence that I endured. But I was looking for happiness, and I saw that's where happiness was. So when everybody put their glasses down, I went around and I drank, and I said, oh, okay, that's liquid in there. That the happiness is in there. So I started drinking happiness. I drank happiness, and I don't remember, and I came to the next day. So that was the motivation. My mother's been sober now. She got sober when I was 5 years before I got sober.
Wow. It's beautiful to hear that, because she's sober and she was able to save her life from, that, because
not that my life became easy when I was 12. The violence still continued, wow. After we make a decision, like, one of the things with the pandemic, we're very much mental health, and we're looking at, okay, what can we do? I can drink today away. I can use today away. I'm in a lot of pain, so I can use this, or I can drink this, or I can do this, or find happiness in there, which is what I did back at the age of 6. And we don't have to do that. We absolutely don't have to do that. We can find happiness in everything. When I'm trying to kill myself at the age of 8, when I was trying to get hit by, on a skateboard, trying to get hit by a car.
Wow.
And I was really close to achieving that. But the car missed my head by about a foot. Literally about 11, 12 inches. I actually, when I opened my eyes, kind of went down the street on the skateboard, laying flat in the morning so the cars would be blinded by the sunrise, and just opened my eyes when I closed my eyes when I crossed the street, laying down flat on the skateboard. And, by the second street, I opened my eyes really quickly, and I could see the underside of a, pickup truck. And, after the third street, I got pulled over by a police officer who gave me a ticket for jaywalking. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll take the jaywalking ticket. I'm not going to tell you what I was actually trying to do. But, after something like that and the traumatic child, what can I complain about today? I'm just quarantined, and I'm quarantined, with my wife and my children. My day is fantastic today. I had a great, so far, great morning. Yesterday was wonderful. If I look at it in perspective, what am I complaining about? Everything's freaking great. As soon as I got sober, I had to make the decision not just to stop drinking, because that's called being dry. And, in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you just stop drinking, we call that dry. But being sober is an aspect of taking responsibility for our actions, taking responsibility for, our days, and being, and filling ourselves up as a human being and giving love to others as we want them to give love to us. Kind of sounds like the Bible or AA or whatever it is you want to choose from. We're all getting the same message from everywhere. It was in my teenage years, between 12 and 17, I was in psychiatric hospitals 5 times for wanting to kill myself. And then I was in a group home, which in the good old days they called orphanages. I was at a group home twice. And the first time I was at the group home, I met Ellen Bradley, who was the program director. That's it. I'm going back quite a few years now to remember that title. Yeah. She was the program director over at Penny Lane, pennylane.org. Support them. They're absolutely amazing. And she was there, and she let me know that my life was worth living, even if I didn't believe it. And then I left, and then I came back, and she took me to my first AA meeting. I love you, whether you love yourself or not. I think you're amazing, whether you think you're amazing or not. You don't have to think that yet. You don't have to love yourself today. It doesn't matter, but just know that I do. And I'm saying that to you. And I'm saying that to every single one of your listeners. And I'm being completely honest. When I say I love you totally and completely, whether you love yourself or not. And if you don't have to. It's okay. It's a process. It's something that we learn from somebody else. Ellen came into my life. The relationship with my mother, my God, and my father, one was more violent, one was incredibly violent, and the other one was worse. Somebody came into my life Ellen came into my life and said, I love you, period. I will love you until you love yourself. I will support you until you support yourself. I don't know the emotional aspect. I thank her for my life. And then many years later, I met then a couple of years later, I met my wife. I was 19 years old. We've been together almost 30 years. She entered my life and said, I love you, period. I love you whether you love yourself or not. I loved myself at that point. But she said, I will love you, and I love you whether you love yourself or not, support you whether you love yourself or not.
That's beautiful.
Until you do, I will continue. And then I had my children. And when I had my children, my daughter was born when I was 30 years old. I see this baby who I feel who then I turn to and I say, I love you no matter what. I will support you no matter what. You don't have to love you don't have to love yourself. That's a process. So what people told me is what I turned and I told my children. And then that's why, with his own way, writing it about a failure, it's like, oh my gosh, somebody who I dedicated my life to, my children, I failed them. When I say I hate the books, I don't really hate the books. They just make me sad because I had to go to where did I fail as a parent? Ellen never failed me. My wife, I don't want to sleep on the couch tonight. She never failed me. She's always wonderful. She's always supportive. I'm kidding a little bit, but she's an amazing woman. That's why I've been with her for almost 30 years, since June 3rd, 1992 at 10:25 p.m. So we're at 29. We're almost at 29 years together. So I give back to my children, and understanding the pain and agony and strain that I had when I was a child with parents who were going through pain but did not acknowledge the children. His Own Way is the acknowledgement, and all these books are the acknowledgement of the stresses and strains that children are going through. This is the fourth book that His Own Way is the fourth book that I put out. This year, I will put out another 5 books. I've written over 30 books. And what I'm really working on doing is not writing so much, because right now I've got a schedule for release through 2025. Because I keep looking at my children. Where does my inspiration come from? A violent past, amazing children, seeing the issues that they're going through, seeing the issues that I went through as a child. What could have been different? What could have been, what could have? And those are the books. The next book, My Mommy and Daddy's My Mom, we'll talk about that next time I come on.
Oh, yeah. I'll have you back. I'll have you back about talking about that book, because I can't imagine the story behind that book. And it's impressive because, Sergio, loving yourself and just, accepting yourself and just loving everyone as they are, even if they're not in that step of their life. And just having an Ellen Bradley and you being able to get inspired. Because I'm inspired when I read your story and I was going to have you in the show. I said, this is going to be a wonderful, maybe a historic, dialogue, because I personally, as a father, I said, and I will say this, publicly, I thought that I was never going to be a father. I said, you know what? I want to have a career. I want to have a wife, and I want to travel the world and all that stuff. When Camila Valentina, our first daughter, was born, it's just the best feeling in the world. It's just something extremely, it's an out of your body experience, because you're like, wow, this is just this beautiful human being you're gonna love forever. And the second miracle that is, Nicholas, because me and my wife, we went through infertility issues for like 10 years. The first 10 years of our marriage, it was like, oh my God, we're never gonna be able to have kids. We have Camila, and then second one we have Nicholas. You're like, wow, this is just impressive. And I was, oh my God, like, your kid, you live through your kids, and your kids, and you learn from your kids, and you get so much inspiration. And not only that, but you mentioned your wife. My wife is the most special human being in my life, because she saved me from the way that I was going into life. Thanks to her, we have been able to have a great life. I became a successful, entrepreneur, having, the podcast, successful, podcast, but she's been there supporting me, but as well just creating that structure, that base of love in our home. The same thing that you have created, with your wife, your 2 beautiful kids, and this beautiful mission, because, Sergio, there's more than just That's Publishing and these amazing books. You're even, working, and I have to say this, and I have to acknowledge you by this, you've been counseling law enforcement officers in the LAPD, for sheriff department, the military for PTSD. Plus, additionally, you have been going to state prisons, even to death row, in Texas, just to meet with an inmate to let them know that you were there, that you even care, that even if nobody care about their life, this is just like, I get goosebumps, and it's extremely impactful. And even you're waiting for this pandemic just to slow down a little bit to be able to go to another prisoner that is in Alabama in death row, because you believe that people like Ellen Bradley that have inspired you from that day you need to be there for them, because there's always hope, and just to be able to live in peace. And you're doing more work than what people are thinking. That's Publishing, your mission to create awareness for autism, family, your daughter, how to handle, those specific things, avoiding just forgetting about that other child, being able to integrate them, and being part of the solution, providing that structure, those values, those love. Plus, additionally, you're showing that to other, gamut of people, and in many other levels, that makes you so special, because You have wrote like 30 books and you have scheduled until 2025, but you still make time for those individuals that they need someone like an Ellen Bradley, but you're embracing that same mission. And they're going to have a Sergio Liden. How that feels to you emotionally when you know that they will maybe just talk to their family and saying, hey, I had Sergio with me today, and maybe I see life way differently. And they might be able to inspire other family members that they maybe were not able for the circumstances to be there because they have to heal from whatever they did in life, but you're not judging them. How do you feel and how that really impacts you? Because those experiences can only come through you and your experience with just facing these inmates, some people that sometimes society just tends to put away. I always believe in second and sometimes even third or fourth chances. We're human beings. And sometimes, that circumstances snap change your life. But how Sergio feels after just meeting these inmates and knowing that Ellen was for you there, but they will say the same, but they will mention Sergio.
I'm not an Ellen. I am not an Ellen. Ellen, wow. I'm not Ellen. Ellen Bradley is an amazing human being who accepted me when I did not accept myself. After the birth of my children, after my children were born, that's when I started writing. The first book was written, Little Itty Bitty's First Day. I wrote it when my daughter was laying down on the floor. By the way, your oldest child is a girl, and the next one is a boy, just like myself. That's fantastic.
It's fantastic. They're the blessing. My kids are amazing, and I really, I love my family tremendously, like yourself. That's what we share love for our families. They are my inspiration. And just to tell you, like the podcast started to record these beautiful conversations and having a space of dialogue. Doesn't matter from what political ideology or any, cultural background or what do you do, but to have recording, to record these amazing dialogues and conversations, that's something that is missing today. For my kids to be able to listen to his dad and for your kids to be able to listen to Sergio or do, significant others to listen to their loved ones and be able to just document history. That's that's how this grew, because people, they said, I cannot have a dialogue with anyone, but how do you have dialogues? And it's like, you got to come off of a place that you got to put everything out the door and just like have a dialogue. We all have more things in common than what we ever think, but we talk politics and everything goes out the door. You gotta we have to be able to have a dialogue, and that's where it comes from. And like I mentioned, you with this mission, and like I mentioned, it's impressive what you're doing with inmates. It have to mean a lot to you.
So after being with Ellen, I knew I had to pass it forward. There's nothing I could say. There's no thank you I could say to Ellen that encompasses what she did for me. The only thing I could do is pass it forward. Being sober, I started going to jails. Originally, it was here in LA County. It's the largest jail system in the world. I was going to Men's Central, Twin Towers downtown, CRDF, which is a women's jail down in Linwood, and Wayside Supermax up in Santa Clarita. If you're not from here, if you find Magic Mountain in Los Angeles, that's Santa Clarita. Or that's close enough to Santa Clarita, to where those jails were. So I was meeting with inmates, and to lower their recidivism rate. They're coming out, they're going right back in. So what could I do to assist them? While working with them, with the inmates, to figure out how to lower the recidivism rate. And I got kind of a little bit in trouble because after, they have a rule that if you're going to work with the inmates, you can't really talk to them for about 3 months after, if they get released, you have to wait 3 months to talk to them. And I started getting in trouble because I started getting cut, because as soon as one of the problems that they've found, is that when they got released, they had nowhere to go. They were homeless. So I started looking for places for them to live. Sobriety houses, homeless shelters, but ones that were towards lifting the soul, lifting the spirit. And so I started, when they got released, they told me what day they were getting released and what time they were getting released. And, they downtown at Twin Towers is where they were checking out, so to speak, when they were, getting released, then I'd pick them up and I'd take them immediately. I would take them to somewhere where they could get the assistance and continued assistance. So it wasn't, let me talk to you and then good luck. It was, let me find out what it is that is holding you back, what it is, why do you keep returning? From there, the aspect went to talking to the sheriffs that were, that were in charge of the jail system. Sheriffs are 5 times more likely to get heart attacks than the rest of the population because it's an incredibly stressful job.
Wow. Yeah.
Sheriffs are telling, and sheriffs cannot talk about what they see in jail and then go home and tell their wife, this is what I saw today. I'm not going to describe any of it here unless you want to start getting nauseous, unless you want to start seeing a therapist yourself or feel like you need a heart attack, seeing the atrocities every single day at work. So one of the things is, as a sheriff, you cannot talk, you cannot tell your fellow deputies, by the way, I'm having a hard time today, because they're like, wow, I kind of depend on you for my life. This is life or death over here. There are some guys behind bars that are just incredibly violent, though we can talk about bail, where the bail, for example, is so much higher for African Americans or Latinos than it is for white people. So you have a lot of individuals that are sitting in jail just waiting for a court date because they don't get bail. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about, the aspect of the violence. But behind bars, funny things happen. So, one deputy says, my life is in your hands. You have a problem, an emotional problem, go get a different job. So nobody's going to lose their job because they're talking about the emotional strain that they're having. And one of the things that I found with the deputies, the sheriff deputies, is that when I talked to them and I listened, I told them what I was doing, and they're like, oh, let me talk to you. Do they have counselors? Of course they have. The sheriff's department provides counselors. They weren't talking to the counselors because they didn't want it on their record, on their work record. So it was, so I let them know what I was doing, and then they talked to me, and there was no judgment. I was just sitting there listening, and I gave them some tools on what they could do. Then we take it to the next step. My children are about to enter junior high. And I was looking at, oh my gosh, should I be concerned about my children? School shootings. Well, I still went to jail and I still talked to sheriffs. And then I started talking to LAPD, and then phone calls were from, a sheriff would give me a call, or, LAPD would give me a call and say, by the way, so-and-so told me to talk, to give you a call. And I was like, wow, they're talking amongst themselves. Some of them that are very close, they're giving me calls on my cell phone. Wow. All of a sudden I'm there's recommendations. It's like, wow, okay, this is cool. And all of this I do for free. I didn't go to school for it. And I think because I was crazy as a kid, because I lived the life that I did, there's an aspect of trust. There are 500,000 children today in the United States that are either in group homes, foster care, or in juvenile hall. And I was one of those back when I was, when I was a teenager. I was in a group home. So, the aspect that, so when talking to an actual therapist, there's a concern of, how do you understand my pain? Why would you understand my pain? As trained as a therapist may be, that why should you understand my pain? Which is a concern that individuals have had that have spoken to me, and concerns that I had when I was a kid. Because back then it was, we'll give you more medication. You're depressed, we'll give you more medication. I was 12 years old. Just a quick story. I'm 12 years old. I went to a psychiatrist because I was suicidal. So I went to a psychiatrist, and I told him a story about how my father would beat me with a stick. Think Home Depot, not a tree. He'd have me pull down my pants, and he'd hit me. He was 6'5". Wow. He'd hit me, and I'd go to the bathroom after. He'd hit me until I stopped crying. I'm going to hit you until you stop crying. And then I would go to the bathroom, and I would pull down my pants, and I would see this thing on my butt swell, change colors. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, don't let them win. Every time a hand went up between the ages of like 5 and 15, usually it was coming down to hit me. So I was talking to my psychiatrist, and I told them about all this physical abuse that I'd been enduring for the previous 6 years. I was 12. So it's for the previous 7 years since I was 5, since I came to this country, where I was constantly running. From Spain, I ran to Argentina. From Argentina, I ran to the United States. In the United States, I ran away from the pain at home by drinking, or trying to kill myself, or drinking again. And So he said, so he put me on medication he diagnosed me as paranoid, manic depressive schizophrenic. Paranoid was because every time my hand went up, I knew it was going to come down and hit me. So I was paranoid. Manic depressive just means really sad. So I was really sad because I was getting beaten. And schizophrenic because I told him about that conversation that I had with myself in the mirror when I said, don't let them win. And so he put me on this medication, and I stayed on the medication until I was 17, and then the dose was raised if they were upset with me, or let's raise the medication so I can feel like I've earned my, my paycheck. When my children were about to enter junior high, so back then I had this fear of therapists. That was what I was kind of coming around to. The aspect of, I really don't trust you because you want to just give me drugs. And that's from personal experience. Until I got to Penny Lane. And over there was completely different with Ellen Bradley. And, my therapist there, Carol Goldberg, she passed away. I love her completely. She's the one that said, go to a meeting. That night, Ellen picked me up and said, I'm taking you to a meeting. And she took me. But when my children were entering junior high, I was worried about their safety, school shooters. Do I have to worry about school shooters? So I did a little bit of research, and I found school shooters are most prevalent, most happen in high school, then in the university college level. Third is junior high, then fourth is elementary schools. The case was youngest as a 6-year-old in Michigan that killed another child, took a gun to school and killed another child.
Wow.
So I was worried, do I have to worry about school shooters? So I was like, well, who am I going to ask about why? If I look at motivation, you do this because of that. Everything, you do this because of that. No matter what action you're taking, you're doing it because of something else. So I thought, well, who better to ask than school shooters? So I started reaching out to school shooters, and I started visiting school shooters in prisons, individuals who committed, murders, and if they didn't commit the murder, if they just, I wasn't interested. Who went all the way? Who went all the way to answer that question? And, and I found a few shooters who, at the time they committed the crime, people were killed. And I went and I talked to them. I wrote letters. One guy in Wisconsin, another one up in Washington, and another one here in California. And I went and visited them, wrote letters back and forth, wanting to understand. And because of my past, they were very open to talking to me and going to the prisons and talking to them and trying to figure out why. I got an answer. It's like, wow, this is why you did it. And it's like, oh my gosh. It's like one guy, he was set on fire by other students.
That's crazy. Wow.
He was beat, unconscious almost on a daily basis. And I was like, wow, I don't condone school shootings. But I can understand, when his father went to the guy,
is that anger, Sergio? The anger is building up and being I was bullied. I was bullied in school, and I have talked about it in the show. I was bullied in school, and you build anger internally that you're like, how I can heal about this, or how I can just, accept the apologies, or maybe able to move on from that stage, because it's a lot of pain. People suffering, you suffer bully, I suffer bully, and we understand how it's just so much that you can take until the rope snaps,
Exactly. Yes. And that's a sad thing. We do not talk about that. We do not talk about that. The reasons why. We look at them and, one kid commits suicide, and we say, okay, that's very sad. He's had mental health problems. Another one is pulls the trigger and shoots outwards. And, it's the line between suicide and homicide. It's a very fine. It's like, it's directional. So another child points the gun outwards, kills people, and they're like, okay, the guy's crazy. It's like, wow, come on. We created these people. If we come to accept people for who they are, not that I'm trying to bring it back to the book, but, if we accept people for who they are all the way across from every age, there's no motivation. It is important.
That's why the books that you have wrote are, and, I'm writing, they are there to give those tools to avoid those kind of situations and be able to take it from here and build a better environment, a better country, a better world for people. And it's just a struggle because every single person, and this is why, I appreciate and respect so much your books, because it just really opens the tough dialogue that every single person is different, that every single person thinks different, that one could be on the right, could be on the left, could be on the middle, could have any type of physical or mental differences, and we have to accept them and find the way to understand them. And it's difficult sometimes to reprogram ourselves to just accept, because we sometimes are in this frame of mind and work, or maybe frame of thinking that put us in the situation that they don't think like me. That's a problem. I feel sad when people say, like, an example. I'm gonna use this analogy because some people's like, I'm left and I cannot talk to I'm like, you gotta talk. Like, we have to just talk. And an example is like, no, but this person thinks like this and this other person thinks like that. I'm not gonna talk to them because I don't like you gotta talk. We have more in common than what we think. And I think that accepting and being open and being able to embrace people and being able to just provide them and just start with the point. If everyone starts with the point of love, everything will be very different. And that's why you're transmitting with your books. You're transmitting love and tools in how we can be able to be better, embrace, and not only that, but accept everyone as who they are. And it's something that unfortunately is lacking these days in the world. And that's why your books not only create awareness for autism with your story, with your son, your family, your daughter, your wife, but it resonates in every single stage that we're living currently in this world. And everyone should read it. That's why everyone should go to thatspublishing.com and buy the book on his way, and the other prior 3 books that That's Publishing have created, wrote it by Sergio, who we have today, Sergio Liden, that we have here in the podcast. And wow, this conversation has been impressive, Sergio, and that's why they're important, your books. That's why I say it. Your books are important for this reason. It doesn't only apply to your experience and provide those tools to those parents that they're living the same experience as yourself, but but other things more.
Thank you so much. The book I put out before this one came out February 9th, Little Itty Bitties Fly Me to the Moon. It was the second book in that series. There's about 17 books in the Little Itty Bitty series, starting with Little Bitty's First Day. That's came out on the 22nd of December of 2020. So Fly Me to the Moon, Little Bitties Fly Me to the Moon, on a superficial level, it's what happens when we put a baby in the crib for the night and say, good night, we'll see you in the morning. And then what happens when itty bitty is the baby, that's put into the crib, and the parents say good night. And how does itty bitty deal with? That book was inspired by a few things. That was the most recent book that I wrote. It was written during the pandemic, which was the aspect of confinement. It was studied looking after jails, after prisons. Let's take it to the next step. I started talking to, I was interested in the death penalty, and what happened there, and doing a bit of research there. I went and visited a guy named Juan Valderas from Mexico in October 2019, right before the pandemic started. He's on death row in Texas. The fact that he is not guilty of the crime does not matter. We should not do this. Putting people on death row doesn't make any sense. The biggest deterrent to violent crime is not threatening somebody with the death penalty. It's threatening somebody with life without the possibility of parole. You're going to stay alive for the next 60 years is a little more, a little more stressful than saying, we're going to kill you, in the next 16 years, which is approximately the amount of time somebody sits on death row in solitary confinement before being executed. 2 weeks into studying the death penalty before having gone and met with Juan Valderas, 2 weeks in solitary confinement brings on onset of depression and schizophrenia. So the beginning stages of diagnosable, according to, psychiatry, it's onset depression and schizophrenia in the first 2 weeks of solitary confinement. Seeing that factor, I wrote that book because we're all suffering from a little bit of depression and schizophrenia if we're locked up at home. And we've all been locked up at home for the pandemic. So we've all been in, not to the extreme that they are in, that Juan is, but, and lots of love to his wife, Yancy, who's the one that introduced me to Juan. I met her during an execution that I went to back in 2015. With the aspect of the solitary factors that are not being in, prison, solitary and at home solitary, a little bit different, but we still suffer the same issues. We still suffer the aspect of onset. We're talking about mental illness, which is not something we talk about because we don't want people to think we're crazy. It gets a little stressful. It gets a little, I look at things from a different perspective. So the schizophrenia and depression, I don't get depressed. I get sad, which is the human form of, depression. I don't like calling myself depressed because if I call myself depressed, that means I'm always depressed.
Yeah.
My son is autistic. There is no cure. So he's autistic. If I'm depressed, there's medication I can take for depression, but that means I can never be happy. Or does it? I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. So I like to say that do I get sad every once in a while? Of course. Do I miss, but the aspect of why am I sad? Well, because I can't get together with friends. I can't take my children to Disneyland. I can't take them on vacation. I can't take them on trips. Yeah, that makes me a little sad. Does it make me depressed? No. And I'm not going to call it depressed. It's, what, we're all suffering from it. We're all dealing with it.
Correct.
So, Fly Me to the Moon, that's where that one came from the aspect of looking at solitary confinement with Juan and then seeing what we all were dealing with and saying, like, what is the solution? Because none of my books have they express a problem, but they all have a solution. Every single one of my books has solutions. Let me, send your address, and lots of love to Jasmine Espada for putting this together. If she has your address, I'll ship you all my books.
No, sure.
I printed it. For Dad's Publishing, we printed a small number of hardcovers for media, and we're selling them as ebooks. They're on Apple, Amazon, Kobo, and Google.
Right. And this is great. I was going to ask you for it, where people can find your books. Sergio, this is bigger than both of us with these books. And this is bigger than that's publishing. This is just the humanity need these books. Where people can find your books, where they can buy them, how they can support That's Publishing, how they can educate themselves, how they can just provide the best gift to families buying your books.
In supporting That's Publishing, I decided 1 year after, I'm taking $1 for every book, and I'm going to split it amongst a couple charities. What charities that'll be decided later, but $1 for every book. I don't want to push the aspect of buy a book you're giving to charity, because I don't want to manipulate. But yeah, $1 a book is going to every single 1 to 2 charities. My business partner, he's a dad. I'm a dad. So the company is called Dads because we're 2 people. Dad's Publishing. So dadspublishing.com is the name of the company. And if you go in there, you can get all the information. It shows the books, what books are available, what is released, what is, ready to come into the market. It's in that dadspublishing.com. And from there, you can click purchase book. You can click on the book that you want, do a little bit of, research. You could, look at the book. We have a few different images for each book in that, in that area. And to purchase the book, just click purchase book and it'll take you to, you can choose Apple, Amazon, Kobo, or Google to purchase the book. Kobo is used internationally, and everybody gets Apple and Amazon, quite easily. Most people get those easily accessible. But the reason that we're doing ebooks is so that we're not clogging up the mail system and so that everybody can get the book now. I don't want people to have to wait a minute
correct
to get the book. Don't wait a day. Don't wait 2 days. You want the book, click it, you get it instantaneously. That's why we're doing it as ebooks. After the pandemic is over, maybe at that point we'll go ahead and consider, at that point we'll look at printing them up as hardcovers. So the hardcovers are not available right now, except to Mr. Otero.
Correct.
I'll send you all the books that the first 4 books. The greatest Christmas ever.
I appreciate that a lot.
I
appreciate that a lot because, obviously I'm a big supporter of your work, and this is your house. Like I told you before, having this wonderful historic conversation with the amazing author, children's book author, activist, Sergio Liden, who is, in our podcast here today, of Dialogo. Sergio, what message would you like to give to the thousands and thousands that they listen to our podcast about That's Publishing, in his own way, your latest book, your 4th installment of That's Publishing, and what message do you like people to take away from this amazing conversation that you and we had?
Being Latino, having been ripped down, starting at the age of, by somebody else other than in the family at the age of 7. I told that story. Taking a little bit of control of my life. I have that permission. So I started a publishing company so that a Latino, me, can have a little bit of control here. Latinos, we don't need to be just in the forefront. We need to be in the background as well. So on the forefront, esta Latina aquí escribe todos los libros. On the background, I'm the publisher as well. Tengo ese acento porteño del porteño de Argentina, que es de castellano de España, por la razón que cuando tuve 14 años viví en Buenos Aires con mi abuela. Estuve tan triste aquí que me quise suicidar. Mi padre me dijo, sabes, te vamos a mandar con tu abuela. Por eso pegamos el acento porteño. Pero siendo latino, no necesito, I don't need your permission to excel. I don't need your permission to excel. That's why I started a publishing company. The books, who are they for? We say they're children's books for the heart of the family. The only prerequisite that you need to buy any of the books is you have to have been a child. You don't have to be a child now. You have to have been a child at some point. If you were ever a child, then it's okay for you to get one of the books. If you never were a child, do not buy these books. Seriously, not interested in, I'm going to make sure you don't get any books if you were never a child. They're for the heart of the family. For adults, going to movies with my children before the pandemic, obviously, in the last 5 years was much more enjoyable than going to the films, 20 or 15 years ago when they were much younger, because there are more jokes for the adults.
Correct.
There's information for the adults. And the reason these books are so long, they're much longer than most children's books, is because that 4-page book, or the 5-page book, that I wrote, that I read to my daughter, Daddy, read it again, and it drove me insane. These are longer books. Children are smart. 40%, of the child's brain is developed by the age of 3. So why we're going to, they're going to suffer from the inability to concentrate if we treat them like they can't pay attention. So giving them something with beautiful illustrations, and though the topics on the background are very deep, on the foreground, these books are beautifully illustrated. They're very sweet. I wish I had these books for my children. This one is a 39-page book. I've got some that'll be coming out, in 2022, that are 60 some odd pages long. 65 pages long. They get really long. They've got a shorter book that's, 25 pages, and that's Fly Me to the Moon. But these are long books comparatively, because children can concentrate, and for the parent to be able to read the whole story, a beginning, a middle, and an end that we're giving a child. My children are not, my child is not a purple hippopotamus. My other child is not a unicorn that likes to fly over. They're human beings. And these stories are all narrated, but all the stories are told from the child's point of view about things that children are going through, and told in a very sweet, funny, and loving fashion. They get a little sad, but then they get very funny, and they have this message that can go across. So as long as you were a child, grab one of the books. And my message to your audience, if I had the option of either telling you to buy a book or to send you my love, ignore the book. I send you my love, and understand, my message to you is understand that though you may be having a difficult time right now, it's okay. It's totally normal. Understand you're not crazy. You're normal by having a difficult time right now. It's a very stressful time, and it's okay. I love you. And until you believe it, just understand that I know that it's all good, that you're going to be great, that you're going to excel. You lost a job. It's okay. You don't feel. I still find you to be an amazing human being. I've yet to find anybody who I've disagreed with that statement. I've talked to inmates on death row and individuals in prison and jails, and Marines with PTSD pointing guns at me twice. At the beginning of 2016, in the period of 30 days, it was very kind of stressful. They were still very beautiful human beings. People that I was able to understand where they were coming from. And because I was able to understand it and I got it, I can say to you, as I told them, even though you don't have a gun pointed at my chest, I love you. And I'm here for you. And Dad's Publishing is here for you. And we're going to be putting out stories every month and a half, sometimes every 2 months, so that we can get the message out there and, make it easier for everybody, just a little bit easier. We're not expecting miracles. We're not expecting everything to get great, but just a little bit easier. And that's the whole mission that we've had at Dad's Publishing. My business partner, Zachary Zemby, and myself, that's the only mission that we've had. Just make life a little bit easier. And for myself, writing books to individuals, I wish were written when my children were younger. I wish were written when, my children were born. Little Itty Bitty's first day is the day that Itty Bitty was born. What is that like for Itty Bitty? What to expect when you're expecting is for the pregnant mom. What happens for the child? What is written for the child? So love to everybody. And Mr. Otero, thank you so much for your time. I listened to to your podcast, and I was thinking, I'm not even at the level of the individuals that you have over there. It was episode, was it 51, with those, women that were counseling that are going around the country.
Oh yeah. The Shift. Yeah. One of my other great, great guests that we had, the Shift, they had a great mission,
yes, the Shift,
those guys from the Shift are tremendous, no, this is your home. Anytime you come here, we have celebrities, A+, and from every single, industry, wrestling, movies, business, music, you name it. But I had to have you in the book. Your story is so compelling, amazing. This is your house anytime, Sergio. Whenever you want, we can talk and hit the fan and talk about anything additionally than Dad's Publishing and your projects, because I love them. But this is your house. Anytime you want to come in, we'll have you. My audience will love and always enjoy conversations like this, because it just opens, the mind of thinking more about different topics that we don't typically just, think about them, in a normal basis or maybe in a day-to-day basis. So this is your house, Sergio, and I appreciate so much, to, providing me this time to have this amazing dialogue for the history of yours and Dad's Publishing. Everyone that they're listening, please go to dadspublishing.com, buy the books, latest book on his own way, wrote by the amazing Sergio Liden, that we have in this amazing podcast and episode, illustrated by the amazing Italian artist Francesco Oronzini, who he really did an amazing job with you. Again, everyone go to dadspublishing.com, go to Amazon as well, and buy the ebook. Again, it's a pleasure, Sergio. We'll have you back again very soon, again, with one of your releases, and this is your house anytime.
Mr. Otero, thank you so much, and lots of love to your audience. Thank you all for taking time and listening.
It's
lots of love to everybody.
Thank you so much. And again, please follow us in all our social media accounts at De Luis Otero, and go to Dialogo con Otero in Instagram, and as well our website, dialogocontero.com. Listen to us in over 27 platforms. Again, go to datspublishing.com, buy On His Own Way, fourth installment of That's Publishing, amazing Sergio Liden, who was part of this amazing podcast and episode. This book, On Its Own Way, illustrated by the amazing Italian artist Francesco Ranzini. And again, we'll see you guys next time in Dialogo with Luis Otero.